We're all jacked up on Mountain Dew, and we got the top 36 wide receivers coming at you like a spider monkey, Chip. TFA fam, welcome into another video. It is finally lineup setting season. We are no longer talking about mocks and busts and sleepers, breakouts, all that stuff. So we have 36 wide receivers we want to get to. We'll talk about a couple other flex options outside of that at the end as well. So we got a lot we want to jump into. Let's just go ahead and get right into it, Kev. The top 12 guys, not a lot of surprising names here, right? Not a lot of guys we have to go into too far. But to kick things off, you have Adams at 1, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, D-Hop, Ridley, DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Keenan Allen, Terry McLaurin, Julio Jones, and Cooper Kupp at 12. I have D-Hop at 1, A.J. Brown at 2, Calvin Ridley, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf, Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson, Keenan Allen, Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin for me at 12. So like I said, I really don't think we have to dive into these top 12 guys too much, but who are you excited to see? Who do you have any, back and forth on as you're going through and setting your top 12 wide receivers for the 2021 fantasy football season? Week 1. It's here, man.
Finally! Yeah, I mean, it was pretty simple for you at the top, It felt a lot like my draft rankings that I had because, Devontae Adams at 1, simple, easy, he's going to see a ton of targets. Nothing's really changed there. Tyreek Hill is Tyreek Hill. I mean, so really deserves conversation here. For me, I think it comes down to a couple of guys, like for this week anyways, in terms of our wide receiver. A.J. Brown. Absolutely love him this week. I could have had him higher. I think you have him much higher than me. I believe you have him at 2, right?
Correct.
Yes. And so I love that because I think this is a great matchup. Like, listen, I love this game. This Tennessee-Arizona game has the makings to be one of the top scoring games on the entire slate of games this weekend. And so I love A.J. Brown. I also have Julio Jones as a wide receiver 1 this week, which, you got to get all of the Julio Jones in early as much as you possibly can because you don't know when a soft tissue injury is going to come up for him. But I love this matchup. There's nobody in this Arizona secondary that can stop either one of these two. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot this week. And so for me, it's pretty simple with these two. Like I think you definitely are playing them. You're definitely starting them. The rest of it was pretty simple for me. I mean, Cooper Kupp, I have him higher than consensus. I know. I think most people have Robert Woods ahead of him. But I just think this is a great matchup for him going against Chicago. That's kind of where I stand with these guys. Like, I don't think there's a lot of fluff with his top 11 or with his top 12 guys, right? You drafted him to be that. You're playing him as that. They're ballers every single week. There's no matchups, at least here, that really stand out to me that I'm like overly worried about. And then I'm like, oh man, we might have to be worried about this with this guy. So we'll get some more of that when we get to the wide receiver 2s.
Yeah, I honestly don't have anything to add. I do feel like I could have put some of the Cowboy receivers, up here in this range as well. Obviously, I have both Tampa Bay receivers with Evans and Godwin at the bottom of my wide receiver 1 ranks. But like I said, if you did not see the quarterback tight end ranking video we did, I have Brady at 1 this week because I think he just absolutely just like a hot knife through butter, just decimates this Cowboys secondary. So why don't we go ahead and just jump into the wide receiver 2 rankings where we might have a little bit more discussion. The aforementioned Mike Evans you have leading off at 13, followed by DJ Moore, Allen Robinson, CeeDee Lamb, Robert Woods, Deontay Johnson, Chris Godwin, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, Tyler Lockett, Amari Cooper all the way down at 23. Oh no, baby, what is you doing? Odell Beckham at 24, and then I have Cooper up at 13, CeeDee Lamb, Julio Jones at 15, DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson, Brandon Ayuk, Tyler Lockett, Robert Woods, Odell Beckham at 22, Devonta Smith at 23 for me, and Juju Smith-Schuster at 24. So go ahead and go through some of these wide receiver 2s, Kev, and also I need you to tell me why do you hate Amari Cooper so much?
We'll get to that, but let's just start things off here. Okay. DJ Moore at 14. I feel like that's easy. Going against the Jets, Jets secondary is still trash. I think DJ Moore and both Robbie Anderson are viable options. I'm going to wait and see on Terrace Marshall. I love Terrace Marshall. I actually have Terrace Marshall as a flex option if you wanted to play him, but I just don't think you're probably going to need to at this point. Give it a couple of weeks. Let's see how this thing plays out before we stick Terrace Marshall in our lineups. Well, once you get past them, Allen Robinson, I probably, I have him at 15. I don't think that's that low. I don't love this matchup, especially for Andy Dalton. That's what I'm the most concerned with. I mean, we could be seeing this team get boat raced this week against the Rams, and we're already talking about when is Justin Fields going to be inserted into the lineup. So I just don't love this matchup for the Bears, and I don't. So for me, I have Allen Robinson a little bit lower. Past that, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans were kind of tough because, listen, I like as much as we've talked about, I think how great this matchup is. I'm just concerned with the play volume here. And really, let's get to the Cowboys guys, right? The reason I have Amari Cooper where I have him, because I do think there's some concern here, at least early on in the season. One, Dak hasn't really played a whole lot. He's coming off that major injury, but he missed all that time, all of camp and all of preseason to really, kind of get the rust knocked off. We're talking about a player that hasn't played since, week 5 of last year. And then he didn't really get much opportunity to do anything in training camp because he was hurt with a shoulder injury and everything else. And so I just think there's a concern here with this offense, at least for week 1. You're not sitting Amari Cooper, but I'm just not as high on him for this week, just because I don't know what to really expect here from this offense week 1, right? I think this could be a little bit of a disaster where we're talking about next week about how this offense looks. And so, but I just think we need to give this offense a little bit of time. And this isn't a great matchup. Listen, you're playing Thursday night game, first game of the year. The Bucs are defending Super Bowl champs. They're going to be coming to make a statement, against the Cowboys. And so I just think this could go a little bit sideways for this Cowboys offense. So I'm a little bit lower now. And then from there, listen. I said everything I had to say about Joe Burrow in the quarterback video, where I'm not nearly as high on him, but I do like T. Higgins this week. This secondary for the Vikings is okay at best, and they did add Rashad Breeland over the offseason, who can definitely be had deep. And then you also have they added Patrick Peterson as well in this, but we're talking about a very veteran-heavy secondary, but both of them can be had. So I do like T. Higgins. If I'm going to start a Bengal wide receiver this week, it's going to be T. Higgins. I think he's locked in.
I think it's going to be a Tyler Boyd week, just because I think this defensive line is going to get after the Bengals offensive line. If it is I don't want to say as bad, but if it's as serious as the reports were coming out with Joe Burrow not being comfortable with that knee yet, he's not going to be holding on to the ball. I think we're going to see a heavy dose of Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon underneath and just getting that ball out of his hands. And I don't think he's going to have the time to let those kind of plays develop downfield either. And then if Jamar Chase, talk about the mental side of it, if he can't get over his hiccups with dropping the ball either, it could be a very long day for that Bengals offense. Other than that, I think Ayuk is somebody who, let's pay attention to the hamstring. We talked about this in the quarterback video. I think if there's any hesitancy with that hamstring at all, I think we see San Fran just hold him out. We saw Ayuk, deal with some injuries last year, that entire 49ers offense. So I don't think there's going to be any reason for them, especially going up against Detroit, to rush him in there. So if he's not in, obviously Deebo Samuel, who's healthy right now, he's going to shoot up. But Ayuk is someone who I could have a little bit higher because I love that matchup. And then other than that, I'm with you on having Cooper Kupp ahead of Robert Woods. Chicago did have the rookie cornerback last year, whose name is escaping me, Johnson, I think, who played really well. So if Robert Woods is going to get him on the outside, Cooper Kupp is going to be freed up in the slot. So I'm with you there. And obviously, I have Woods down here around where you have him as well. And then Devonta Smith, again, with the quarterback video, we talked about this matchup a lot already. We talked about with the running back video as well. But I think Devonta Smith is in for a really nice day going up against that defense. I think we see a lot of points scored because I don't think there's going to be a lot of defense played on either side of that matchup. And then Juju Smith-Schuster up here at 24 for me. The slot is where you, at least last year, and that's all we have to go off of right now, but the slot is how you attack that Bills defense. So I think it's going to be much like I said, it's going to be a Tyler Boyd game for the Bengals. I think it's going to be a Juju game for the Steelers. I'm glad to see that we're both kind of on the same page with Odell Beckham. That's a game we both really like as well. Other than that, I don't think that there's too much more to talk about. Are you ready to go over the wide receiver threes?
Let's do it.
Yeah. Wide receiver threes. You're kicking off with the guy we just talked about, Devonta Smith. You have Jerry Jeudy at 26, Adam Thielen, Michael Pittman, Chase Claypool, Corey Davis, Laviska Shenault, Kenny Golladay, Juju down at 33 for you, Robbie Anderson, who you talked about earlier, at 34, Deebo Samuel, and then Marquise Brown at 36. I have a T. Higgins at 25, Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, Chase Claypool, Tyler Boyd, Deebo Samuel, Michael Pittman, Jamar Chase, Robbie Anderson, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and Jarvis Landry at 36. Now, this is kind of the point where we get where there's like, I went back and forth on a lot of these guys. I'll be honest, this is probably the hardest group for me for ranking. Like, there were just a bunch of guys I wanted to have higher, wanted to have lower. There's a slew of guys after 36 who I'm also interested in. So, Kev, your wide receiver threes here. How did you parse this out? Who are you excited to see? Who are you unsure of? Talk to me about some of these guys from 25 to 36.
Yeah, well, starting out with Devontae Smith, like we've already talked about. I love this matchup. So if I'm gonna have Jalen Hurts at 4, I got to take some pass catchers with him, and I think Devontae Smith is that guy. And so I like Devontae Smith in this matchup. Jerry Jeudy, listen, he's going to avoid James Bradbury, which is a problem because he's one of the best corners in the league, very underrated corner. And I think that is who Cortland Sutton is going to be seeing in this matchup. And so that's why I have Jerry Jeudy. He's going to play a lot in the slot, and so I think Jerry Jeudy is going to see a lot of targets in this matchup against the Giants. Michael Pittman, I have at 28. He's somebody that I have beat the drum for all offseason. I think that he, starts off things off right, and I think he's the wide receiver 1 for the Colts. And I like this match. Seattle secondary is hot garbage, and I think they're gonna have a lot of problems getting pressure on Carson Wentz, especially with this offensive line that the Colts have. And so I like Michael Pittman. I also like Paris Campbell well ahead of what consensus has him. I don't have him as a top 36 guy, but I definitely have him as a player who should be looking at that if you are in a pinch. But again, we're not really there yet. It's week 1. It's not a guy you need to be starting week 1, but it is a good matchup for Paris Campbell as well. Corey Davis I have in here as well. I think that this Jets offense is going to be a fun offense this year. I like Zach Wilson, and I think Corey Davis is, especially early on, is going to be the guy who's going to get to see the most targets. It looks like we're going to have to wait and see with Jamison Crowder, because Jamison Crowder got put on the COVID list. He may not be clear time for week 1. If he's not, then I think it just kind of consolidates things more, where you have really, we're looking at Corey Davis, Keelan Cole for the brand, and Elijah Moore in the slot. And then really, they have Tyler Kroft at tight end, right? Or at tight end. So I think Corey Davis sees a lot of targets here in this game, probably 10 plus targets, I think, is well in the range of possibility for Corey Davis in this matchup against the Panthers, in a game that I think could actually have a lot of high scoring potential, because these are two teams that don't really have much in terms of a defense. So I like Corey Davis. I think he's definitely in play as a wide receiver 3/flex option. Most people probably have him as their flex, and I think you definitely want to fire him up in this matchup. Some of the other guys that Laviska Shenault. Listen, if I think we both have Trevor Lawrence as top 15, you have to have some Jaguars wide receivers then inside your top 36 for that to even make sense, because what else is going to happen here? Like, he has to take somebody with him, and so I definitely think it's Laviska Shenault. I think you see them manufacture touches for him, and I think he breaks out in a big way this year. So I like Laviska Shenault as a top 36 option. I also actually have DJ Shark right outside of my top 36. I have him at 38. So as far as the rest of my rankings are concerned, Kenny Golladay, I just don't know what to do with him. He's had all these soft tissue injuries. Like, it's kind of went back and forth. It sounds like he's going to play, this week. But, I just don't know, especially for a guy who's had as many injuries as he's had, and soft tissue injuries. He could play the first quarter and, get knocked out with another soft tissue injury. I just don't feel confident in playing him right now. But, I think if you have him, you're probably going to have to start him, because you probably drafted him. And I don't know if you have another option that's going to be better than him. But I would be concerned. And so that's all I'm going to say about him. And then from there, Marquise Brown. Listen, we already talked about how many weapons they're going to have. I've said how bad this Raiders secondary is going to be. And so I do think Marquise Brown sees a lot of targets. And I think he's at least a few deep targets. And I think that we see them connect on one. I think he is the most viable option this week in terms of a Ravens pass catcher that you're going to want to play, not named Mark Andrews. And so I like Marquise Brown, as that guy. Once you get past that, I guess we'll talk about that. But, for you, are there any other wide receiver threes that, that you like or you don't really know what to do with?
Having Jerry Judy down at 35 was definitely an oversight on my part. I should have him higher, but he just must have been someone that I skipped over when I was playing with my ranks. So I do like him a bit higher than where I have him at 35. But other than that, we already talked about some of these guys. Like I said, Tyler Boyd, I think, gets peppered with targets in this matchup. Outside of that, I think we can move on to some of the guys who we have outside of the 36. You already mentioned some of these guys, with Laviska Shenault. I have him there. Michael Gallup, I think, is in play. If you have him, I think you can fire him up as a nice flex option. Marvin Jones, you were talking about Laviska Shenault. I really like Marvin Jones this year. Who are some of the other guys outside the top 36 that that you're interested in, or you might be giving a nod to in terms of a flex play, especially if you have 2 flex spots in your leagues?
Russell Gage, definitely. Not very widely owned, only rostered. Like I think it was 36% of leagues. That should be much higher. He's going to be the number 2 wide receiver in this offense, probably number 3 in targets. We love this matchup. We love this game. I think Russell Gage does make some sense as a guy that you could play as a flex. Antonio Brown, I think that he's definitely in play. He's kind of been the forgotten guy in this offense. It's all been about Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. But I think Antonio Brown is going to be a guy on a weekly basis. Is going to see somewhere in the range of 6 to 8 targets every single week, and I think he's a weekly flex option. I think this is a great matchup for him, and so I like Antonio Brown. Mike Williams I think is could be in play, as kind of a flex option if you wanted to. Again, I already kind of talked about this game. Don't absolutely love it. But Jacoby Myers is definitely a guy that I think you could play this week. Now, I will say Miami secondary is very good, and so trusting that this first week, with Xavier Howard and Byron Jones and what they have there in that secondary, it is a tall task, especially for a rookie quarterback. So I don't feel as comfortable playing him. Again, another guy that we kind of talked about with the waivers, and like Marquez Callaway is kind of in the same light. Somebody that we all love in terms of the offseason sleepers and guys that we think could be a real breakout candidate. However, I would temper my expectations with this matchup against Miami just because the secondary is so good. And so while I like Jacoby Myers, I just don't feel comfortable enough to throw him in my lineup this week in this matchup. But in future weeks, you definitely will. Marquez Callaway is the same thing for me. Green Bay, we're talking about,
Can't do it.
I don't think. Here's the thing. I find it very little to no chance that Jair Alexander is going to shadow Marquez Callaway. He's not that guy. He's not that player. I think they probably just play sides in this game, which is a lot of what Jair Alexander did last year. He didn't really shadow a whole lot. Do I think that that's what they do with them this week? I don't think they're going to shadow Marquez Callaway. And so I definitely think there's going to be some opportunities there because the other corners aren't nearly as good as what Jair Alexander is. Still a good defense, still a good secondary, but not on the level of Jair Alexander. So I think there's going to be some opportunities there. I think if you absolutely had to play him, I think you could. I just wouldn't play him with any relative confidence this week just because it's not a great matchup. And now it's kind of they're on the road. They're not playing at home because of the hurricane that happened there, which throws everything off. And so I would just avoid playing Marquez Callaway. But again, people after week 1 overreact, and they all of a sudden whatever happens they thought was going to happen to this guy they drafted who they thought was going to be a sleeper or whatever, and they don't fire, people automatically drop them. Don't do it. Marquez Callaway, Jacoby Myers, guys like this. Bryan Edwards is another guy that we all really like. I'm really interested to see how the Raiders handle Bryan Edwards and Henry Ruggs, especially against this Ravens, but the Ravens secondary is also really good. I would not feel great about that either. But like these are the guys you drafted as kind of these late round guys. Temper expectations. Don't just go drop them after 1 week just because they didn't fire, week 1. Like it's definitely going to happen. Just hold on to them. Wait for some better matchups because all of these guys really have some not great matchups, at least starting out for this first week. But I think moving forward, I think these guys are viable options. The other guy I did want to mention, though, I don't mind playing Randall Cobb this week as a flex. Going against New Orleans, like I said, their secondary is not nearly as what it was last year. They lost to Norris Jenkins. I don't really mind playing Randall Cobb. I think he could be a guy who sees 5 to 7 targets, and depending on if he can find the end zone, I think Randall Cobb's an interesting play this week.
The last ones that I will throw out here, Paris Campbell, I think is definitely in play going up against Seattle, especially now with T.Y. Hilton hitting IR for the first few weeks. I think he's someone who, hey, he's healthy, play him while you can, but before that goes sideways, I think he's someone I don't think you necessarily have to play, but someone I'm really interested in seeing how he's used and how he fares It's a game we've already talked about a bunch, but that is Rondell Moore. I'm really interested to see how he does in this matchup and how they use him, because, I mean, that's a weak secondary to begin with. I mean, you have Janoris Jenkins on one side, Christian Fulton on the other, but I don't know who their slot guy is going to be, and they definitely don't have anybody that can match up with Rondell Moore in terms of what he can do, athletically and after the catch and all that. So I'm really interested to see how he is used, especially in this matchup. It would not surprise me if he kind of springs loose for a couple long gains, maybe finds the end zone. So other than that, I think that's really about it. Sammy Watkins, I don't think you have to play, but if the reports are true that he was by far the best wide receiver that they had throughout the entire camp, outside of Bateman, but obviously he's not going to be playing. That Raiders secondary is trash. Their front seven is much improved, but their secondary leaves a lot to be desired. So if you have him, again, he's healthy, play him while you can. If especially if you're like in a start 3 wide receiver and then like maybe like a 2 flex. If you're in a deeper league like that, I think you could get away with playing Sammy Watkins in this matchup. I was surprised to see that their over-under on that game was either 50.5 or 51.5. I'm going to be taking the under personally, but if Vegas is close to being right on that one, I think you're going to want to have some of those extra pieces in that game. That is going to wrap things up. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a comment if you have any questions. Do it here. Jump in the Discord. There's no reason for you guys for your questions to go unanswered. Same thing with last year. We are going to be committed to answering every single one of them. No question goes unanswered from TFA this year. So please be sure to jump in, ask your questions, and we will see you guys on the next one.